All right. Welcome, everybody, to WineShark Wednesday. Welcome back. Sorry for our brief hiatus, and still things are kind of funky here in the office/studio. Hoping that the sun doesn't bug us too much. But now we have new windows, which are soundish proof. So hopefully less noise from the street, which is cool. Although still I lack any sort of light protection because there's going to have to be custom stuff built for the hemispheres on the top. So please don't mind the random spots of light. But anyway, hope you guys are doing all right. Hello to Donna and Mr. John Carey. Welcome back. Hope everybody's having a great day, great week. Wonderful. Let's talk about summer. So spent some time the last couple weeks just hanging out by friends and family pools. And obviously it had kind of had my mind thinking about summertime special stuff. Also, the show over at the Sleeping Panther, if you haven't been able to join us, we were starting off with poolside wines. And so I wanted to pass a little bit on that knowledge on to you, my YouTube fans. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today. I hope you guys are doing great. Pour yourself a glass and let's get talking about what we mean when we talk about stuff that is ideal for making this 5 quick things for summertime sippers. Okay, first things first, I had a list of requirements. Light, which I realized when I made my notes isn't quite the descriptor I want. Probably gonna move my phone there. Light wines is definitely, light of body is the first kind of requirement we want when the weather is warm. My whole show on Sundays was really devoted to talking about wine styles that kind of fit that mold. But even then, just having a light body isn't really quite enough to make wines acceptable or good, or sorry, I would say the best fit for our outside/poolside use. Again, especially when it's hot. I mean, we've had some easily over 100-degree days here in North Texas, and I'm sure everywhere around you got your hot days there too. So we want something that also provides a refreshing quality. Now, refreshing is not something that we can really kind of quantify, I would say, but the features that I'm talking about when we talk about refreshing is we do want a little bit of acid. Generally speaking, we want the wine to be cold. So most of our red wine world is going to kind of be ruled out of this particular list. And I'll talk about some bonus things at the end where red wine is concerned. But refreshing here, we generally want a reasonable degree of acidity so that it makes our mouth water. We want nice cool wines like white wines and rosés, and we want a nice light body, but not too much on the acid side. We don't want the wines to really be so sharp and so puckering that it becomes unrefreshing all over again, or rather that it needs something else to help balance it out. All the wines I'm going to talk to you about today are examples where they're very smooth and easy drinking, okay? The other factor and the final third kind of criteria here was lower alcohol and how we seek that out. So when we talk about, when we talk in the beer world, for instance, they talk about the idea of what they call a session beer. Session beers are usually about half as alcoholic as other versions. Now, they're just a style of beer. There's nothing special about something that is session beer, but generally session beers are in that 3 to 4 alcohol percent by volume. About half of what they're dealing with on bigger, bolder styles of beer. And in wine, that's certainly on the lower side. Remember, wine usually ranges around 7 to 15% for the easiest to find examples. So the lower we can get towards that number 7 to 10% alcohol is definitely where we want to kind of be. Okay, so light of body, easy flavors, refreshing, cold, mouth-watering without being overpowering, and as low alcohol as we can get. All right. Now, these are not in any particular order. Some of these actually, I realized that after I wrote the list, that it wasn't necessarily I would choose this top to bottom. All of them, I think, are perfect, are wonderful and acceptable, and we'll talk about some of their pros and cons as we go through. The number one example that I almost always come up with, especially when I think about low alcohol, is Riesling, specifically German Riesling, what we call cold climate, Group 1A, 1B grapes in those northern regions have something in spades, and that is low alcohol. Because they struggle to ripen, generally speaking, Rieslings are going to come in at that 7 to 10% like we talked about. Also, they have the right balance of sweetness and acidity to really kind of be that nice, easy drinking, refreshing sort of thing. While I would aim for drier styles, you definitely want something that's dry to semi-dry rather than a fully sweet dessert wine. you definitely have lots of options in the Riesling world from especially all up and down Germany's Mosel River, their Pfalz region, and even the Rheinhessen have some great examples of wines that are going to present with wonderful fruit-forward flavors like green apple, golden apple, light, tiny. They kind of have a little hint of floral things to them, and they're really nice, easy, very approachable wines for this. Now, again, some people think Riesling is too sweet, and that's kind of, I think, the difference between sweet and fruit-forward is something to be aware of, because many of these wines really are in the dry style, even though they have a nice fruity front mouth. So, Riesling from Germany, those three regions specific. Choice number one. Choice number two. Let's head over to Italy and the Veneto region. Veneto specifically is home to one of the more popular Pinot Grigios that really kind of exploded the style a few years back, and that was called Santa Margarita. Now, Pinot Grigio can be very sharp, very lemony, but the Veneto region tends to kind of balance theirs out with more of a citrus profile and citrus floral, like orange blossom is the word I would use. Those orange blossom styles that with a little hint of lemon to them are much approachable at the poolside type level. They don't quite carry the same acid weight as some of their sharper neighbors, and it's a really great example of a wine that is just on its own. If you haven't tried it for your summer afternoons, it is a great choice. All right, number three. Now this one we've kind of been talking about for a while now, but rosé and rosé all day has been sort of a theme going through the wine world for quite some time. Hello to Nikki and to AZ. Welcome back. So here we go. And so, yeah, as John said, solid acidity. You want that mouth-watering nature. Absolutely right. So we got, so the last 30, we talk about rosé all day, right? This whole marketing program has been going on for some time, but really the rise again of rosé wines being basically so well promoted and kind of so perfect for summertime drinking are the rosé from Provence. Now, there are various red grapes involved in making this style. Everything from Cinsault to Grenache to Syrah to Mourvedre to Cabernet Franc and even Cabernet Sauvignon. But those styles, that kind of southern French style, is very much built on their hot summer weather. Right, this is the kind of wine that you're sitting outside on the patio, sipping with friends, watching the beach and the waves roll in. Really good stuff, but also meets all those categories being very light, very refreshing, although they do tend to be more on the mid-alcohol level, and some of our import versions tend to creep up in that 12-13% range. So look for ones that are lighter in style or lighter in alcohol specifically, and I think you'll find yourself rewarded with some wonderful flavors of red currant and unripe watermelon and strawberries and raspberries, and these nice, easy drinking wines that will, frankly, you'll sit there and wonder where the last of the three bottles went as you sit there and have a wonderful conversation. Now, of course, France Beach not included with this thing, but you guys can suit yourselves as far as that's concerned. Next up, number 4, Chenin Blanc, my secret weapon wine, especially from the Loire Valley. Chenin Blanc is the ideal Venn diagram for me of fruit forwardness, versatility, depth of flavor, complexity that I really, really enjoy in a white wine. And I often use it to help customers and students who are trying to learn more about, to graduate out of their sweet wine addictions. Not that there's anything wrong with sweet wine, but again, that's kind of the starting point for a lot of us. And so getting into more complicated wines, Chenin Blanc is a great stepping stone. It's got golden apple flavors. It's got this nice floral note to it. Everything from white flowers to to more of that orange blossom note, and it's just frankly just delicious. Of these first four wines, this one's probably the most mid-body. So if you like something more robust, this is probably the best fit to that category. It's got a nice slick mouthfeel that can actually have some oomph to it. So if you are a red wine drinker by nature or like stronger white wines, this might be your best light, easy substitute. Okay, kind of sits in there in that middle spot and provides you with that complexity that you're looking for. All right, number 5, last but never least. In fact, actually, could arguably be the best of all of them when it comes to meeting the criteria I laid out. But the grape is the region of that wine is known as Vinho Verde, or green wine from Portugal. Actually, the Vinho Verde grape is now a whole thing. Kind of like when we went to Prosecco, they've kind of renamed things because of it. But they call it green, the little green one, because it is often sold in blue bottles with its nice pale straw color, so it looks green in the bottle. Also, it can also have a secondary fermentation, so it can be just ever so very bit sparkling. Not the way that we think of in like a Prosecco or a Cava or a Champagne, but more in a tongue-tingling kind of way. It presents more flavors of citrus and flowers, and it has the beautiful low ABV, usually in the 9 to 10% range, and it hits one other super, super cool part. That is, it's generally speaking very inexpensive. Somewhere between $6 to $8 a bottle is not uncommon. It is a great example of wine for summertime patio use. And it's also great for a starter point if you're in the mood to make wine cocktails. You're going to throw a little bit of fruit in there and splash some seltzer, make yourself a little spritz. The Vinho Verde is where I would start with almost all of those. Although, going back to using our red wines and the kind of bonus notes, a lot of cultures that have red wine as part of their palates over the summer months are not at all hesitant to put that red wine in soda water with fruit of some various sort and make kinds of wine cocktails. I've done a couple recipes on that here before, but I want to remind you, if you are a red wine drinker and that's the flavor profile you like, you can probably go with the wine cocktail and get yourself really well set up for the pool. Cool, icy, refreshing, even though you're pouring yourself a glass of Grenache. And one more bonus note, low-calorie wines. We've been talking about seeing these more and more on the market, and the way that many of the wines are achieving their lower calorie counts is by reducing the alcohol volume of their wines. So you're kind of winning both things there. You're getting that lower ABV. Hopefully the wines are a little less full-bodied. However, some of the ones we've tried haven't been what I would call the best expectation. I want you guys to go out and find your favorite varietal, give a skinny version of it a try, and see whether it stands up. See whether it's something that you really enjoy and fits the bill, and report back in the comments down below, all right? All right, so Riesling from Germany, Pinot Grigio from the Veneto, Rosé from Provence, Chenin Blanc from the Loire, and Vinho Verde from Portugal. Notice all these are actually European wines. A lot of the wine styles that I'm aiming at here are either cool climate like Germany because they retain that lower alcohol, or these countries that have warm weather and built wine to match. So perfect examples there when it comes to Provence, etc. So if you've got a favorite pool time sipper, would absolutely love to hear from you, okay? All right, now it's time for the wine quiz. So our wine wars that we've been doing here pretty regularly, very fun example of testing your wine knowledge. You guys did a great job the other day. I will give you guys more time to answer your questions. I will not run on and rush to the answers. But we have 5 different categories. Vine to Vino, which is about growing grapes, making wine, and the worldwide production of wine. We have the Graposphere, which is about grape varieties, their various wines, and the geography thereof. Then there's Wine Cellar, which is about selecting, storing, and tasting wine. Wine and Food, which is about cooking. Wine and food pairing, my personal favorite, and wine service. And then lastly, Cork Culture, which is about wine people, the wine business, arts, sciences, and wine trivia. So, Mark says, so Kim Crawford at the store today, 70K. Yes, exactly. There's a perfect example. We got that Sauvignon Blanc that's cutting the alcohol volume way down and lowering that calorie count. So what we need to know is whether it's as good as, the standing non-version. I mean, I don't think any of us really generally prefer lower calorie versions of stuff until you have an affinity for it. Kind of like Diet Coke versus regular Coke. So once you've got it in your brain, it becomes the one craving. So maybe low calorie wine is something you guys can get into. But all right, so our first question in our Graposphere. Which pushes the grape skins and pulp to the top of an open-topped fermentation vat to form a cap? Is it a cap screen? Is it carbon dioxide? Or is it gravity? Which of these things pushes grape skins and pulp to the top of an open-top fermentation vat? Cap screen, CO2, or gravity? All right, somebody play a tune of music and you guys can count off some seconds. Meanwhile, I'm going to wet my whistle. That's dead. All right. It was weird. The question, interestingly phrased, specifically since, I don't know anybody who would choose gravity as a thing to push things to the top of a wine vat. So that at least gives you a 50-50 shot here. All right. John is waffling. Donna's weighing in with CO2. Answer is indeed carbon dioxide. That's what I thought. Yeah, remember that CO2 is lighter than air, or actually the action thereof tends to bubble off out of the liquid. So because of that, that's what keeps that plus the fact that the cap also tends to float on top of liquids. But yes, CO2. Yeah, you'd be surprised at how much lift it actually gets, John. That's why the tanks are open top, by the way, is that they're letting the CO2 bleed off into the air and not capturing it, because otherwise you'd make sparkling wine. But yeah, carbon dioxide is the name of the game. All right, true/false question. Barolo and Barbaresco from Piedmont's Nebbiolo grape need little cask or bottle aging to tame tannins and acids. True or false? Barolo and Barbaresco, which are made from Piedmont in Italy, by the way, Nebbiolo grape need little cask or bottle aging to tame tannins and acids. All right. Truth, falsehood, little time. That's the question. As Mark was saying, the lightest stuff goes to the top. These are also floating skins as well. CO2 action. All right. So true, false. Barolo and Barbaresco, the Nebbiolo wines from Piedmont. Do they need a lot or a little? Or rather, the truth is it true that they need little time? Well, none of you are going to answer. I'm just going to tell you. The answer is Nebbiolo is a big grape. Big in flavor at least. Barolo, especially, known as the wine of kings and the king of wines, is a big boy. It takes years to smooth and mellow out. It's one of those wines that at 5 years, it's barely realizing its potential. At 15, it becomes surreal, and the older it gets, the more interesting it gets. Okay? Yes, false. These wines are known for fierce tannin and acidity and may spend up to 20 years in aging, according to the card. Yeah, Barolo and Barbaresco are a classic example of big ageable reds, especially in older style of winemaking methods. It required years before they got good because of those tannins and because of the acids. Also, because the Italians in Piedmont use large format oak, they don't have a lot of air exposure to the wine, and therefore it takes the aging process is slower than if you were using French style smaller barriques. All right. Next question. Which is at fault in wines smelling of rotten eggs? Poor winemaking or the use of egg whites as a clarifying or fining agent? So what causes the fault of smelling like rotten eggs? Is it poor winemaking, use of egg whites to clarify or fine your wine? This is a weird one because I can already tell you I'm not going to like their answer because their question is poorly worded. So, fining, if you guys have not heard me use that word before, is the process of clarifying wine, usually using some sort of non-mechanical method, right? We filter wines to get the solids out. We use various levels of screens and filters to basically get more and more of the solid particles out. You can even use very, very small scales to get you get microscopic particles out of it. However, that's still not the same thing as using some sort of bonding agent. Back in the day, egg whites were used, gelatin, some other things have been used as fining agents to basically clarify the wine. Some winemakers use this because they believe it makes their wine taste better and look clearer. Some winemakers adore the use of it because they think it steals something from the wine. John says poor winemaking is the answer here. And well, that is true, but the problem is they're not telling you what. And think about it. What is the smell of rotten eggs usually associated with? Sulfur products. Yes, sulfur being a stabilizing agent to help control volatile acidity. But let's find out what they say. They just say porn winemaking without any other context. But yes, when you get not oxidization, but when you get sulfur, no sulfur off-gassing or overuse of sulfates in there, bad things happen to your wine. It gets, especially if it's already in the bottle, it's corked up in there, and there's no gas exchange. Let's say you use a wine with a stealth enclosure, like today's Marsanne-Roussanne. Okay, not that today's wine is flawed, but as an example. All right, next question: Is red or white wine traditionally used to make the classic chicken dish coq au vin? For you that are wondering on your French spelling, coq au vin, which literally means chicken and wine. Sorry, I dropped the card. So is coq au vin made with red wine or white wine? That is the essence of their question. Anybody? Roll it out. If you haven't had a good coq au vin, you are not living your life in the correct fashion, according to yours truly. In fact, now I'm going to have to go seek out a coq au vin because I have not had a coq au vin in forever. All right. John and Mark AZ or Nikki, you guys any way in here? Any disagreement with John that it is indeed red wine that makes coq au vin? No, you are indeed correct, John. It is a red wine dish. And it is an amazing little bit of French gastronomy. It's one of those perfect examples where layered quality ingredients, even though the ingredients are simple, create an amazing dish. Here, let me see if I've got I don't know if I have one saved, but I can certainly use my Google Foo with somebody I care about. Let's see. There's simply. Simply recipes is here. Well, that's an interesting one. Yeah, chicken, mushrooms, red wine. There's nothing wrong with what goes on with this. It is the deliciousness. Yeah. Nikki says she doesn't cook. That's why you have friends like me. That is true. That is a perfectly acceptable answer, Nikki. That if you do not cook and do not know coq au vin, you just ask your local favorite cook to make you some. All right, last question. This is going to be a weird one. What financial newspaper publishes Tastings, a wine column by the husband and wife team of Dorothy J. Gator and John Brescher? A financial newspaper that publishes Tastings. A column by Dorothy J. Gator and John Brescher. This is an interesting one. I know about this one because my mother enjoys being part of this particular publication's wine club. So I know that they are indeed into wine. Could be wrong though. My guess is pretty strong though here. And my answer, by the way, is the Wall Street Journal. The answer is yes. The Wall Street Journal is correct. So they actually have a pretty good handle on wine lists. I find them to be a pretty reliable source of good wine advice. If you're in a pinch, you'd be surprised that a financial rag was actually a great source of it. But just think, hey, wherever wine goes, money follows, vice versa, depending on who you say. So, all right. Well, last up, never least, let's talk a little bit about the grocery store wine. Yeah, see there, John had no clue, but Mark got it. The Wine Street with the Wall Street Journal. That's right. All right, so we are next up with the grocery store grab, and this one. So the grocery store grab. The premise here is to get the best value per dollar for non-specialty and non-big box store wines. If out of necessity or convenience you shop at the grocery store, it is not easy to necessarily find trained wine professional help. So we rely on labels and label reading. Also, I think it's just an important part for our industry to grow into making better and more interesting labels. Interesting being informative. So, today's example, as a matter of fact, is something that I pulled up. This is Cline, the family cellars, Marsanne-Roussanne blend. Not, by the way, a wine for poolside summer consumption. Do not confuse today's topic with today's grocery store grab. I did not actually coordinate those two things this week. But Marsanne and Roussanne are two white wine grapes that were made famous by the white blended wines of the Rhone Valley. This one happens to be grown on the Sonoma Coast by a fairly famous and well-known winemaker. This grocery store option is a good example of getting big, bolder white wines that are not Chardonnay. Cline is very well known for their Chardonnay, so it's good that they actually branch out and take their knowledge to this particular grape blend as well. Now, the wine label here, what stood out for me with this is not necessarily the descriptors, but some interesting formative stuff. Now, I couldn't find a picture of the back label, and frankly, the picture that I took was kind of funky, so I'm going to just you're going to have to trust me in reading on this. But on the back, it says Cline Family Cellars since 1982. On the front, obviously, it says a blend. It actually tells us the blend, 78% Marsanne, 22% Roussanne. That is extra points for them for at least telling us specifically what that is. But on the back, it says, we've blended two of our favorite varietals to create this Rhone-style wine with lush mouthfeel and notes of honey, orange, and pineapple. That's it. No marketing test, very brief, but they did at least give us some common flavor words, okay? That's the other thing we're looking for. We want easy to understand wine language. But what really stood out to me was there is a series of graphical notes underneath this. One, it's a Sonoma County label, okay? And then it is basically just saying, hey, like this is where we're from, and it shows they're part of their growers association. It also is clearly labeled vegan, something that we talked about not too long ago. And by the way, with that whole egg whites gelatin thing, that would make the wine non-vegan if it was indeed fined with that. It is also labeled gluten-free. Many wines, again, this is probably a non-starter, but both of those things are put on there to encourage purchasing by folks that have those particular dietary needs. They also have a renew and reusable sign that they are sustainably farmed, and they also have a little comic sheep that says they have woolly weeders, meaning that they use in their sustainability method, they use sheep to help keep the weeds back in their fields and vineyards rather than using pesticides or even manual methods to do so. So that kind of stood out to me. I thought that was kind of a neat idea that while it was very brief and to the point, I liked the fact that it used simple flavor words, and I liked the fact that it included extra information, even if some of it is I would say marketing targeted, being vegan and being gluten-free. You never know, right? For people that are looking for those particular things, it always helps if you have it included already. Why not put it on the label, right? Not that they did anything special to make it those things. Although making it vegan, for instance, and not using fining techniques that use animal products is an active winemaking choice. So I do have to include that on the list. All right. So honey, orange, pineapple. Interesting little example. Now, color-wise, this is actually one of those surprising wines that I think looks lighter than its mouthfeel. The wines of these that I've always had of Marsanne-Roussanne blends tend to be very bright straw gold colors at the most, but they don't get into that burnished gold, darker sort of color that you get out of some Chardonnays. On the nose, it definitely has something to say, and this I think is where the honey comes out of this thing most. There's that, and then there is definitely some sort of undercut of a citrus that I would call indistinct or difficult to define. When I first thought it was lemon, but then I went, no, that's not really it. I thought it was grapefruit, and I said, no, that's not really it. It's kind of like it's got this blended smell of so many of those different citrus styles that it's become one new homogeneous thing. I mean, I almost want to say, without giving offense to Cline or in this note, the idea is it smells like an artificial flavor. It smells like somebody who is trying to make something citrus flavored by blending all these things together with one. Okay, so it's kind of not distinct. It's kind of polyglot. Okay, I don't definitely get the pineapple on the nose, but on the palate, the wine is surprisingly forward in the mouth and rather acidic on the sides of my tongue. It's got this nice little sting and a pop, and there is where it's like biting down on a piece of fresh pineapple. It's got that almost zingy acidity to it, which is very kind of tingling on your tongue, and then it kind of explodes into the back of your mouth, but then it just dies out. It doesn't linger around like many more acid wines. It has this pop of flavor, then mellows out to become this, more complicated mid-mouth honeycomb and citrus and a little hint of maybe there's a little, almost like a resin or a pine resin sort of thing going on there. There's a little bitterness in the very back of your palate that I think is another thing that most wine drinkers wouldn't expect out of a wine style like this. But yeah, so the questions that we always ask ourselves, we know what's in the bottle. We told us exactly what variety it was and how it was blended. It told us specifically that these were grown in Sonoma, on the Sonoma Coast, which is an American viticultural area. It also used flavor words that we liked, plus some interesting other information that normally isn't included on labels. It didn't give us any food-specific pairings. So the labeling overall on this, I'd still call this a solid B plus, A minus at the worst. Because again, it ticks all the boxes pretty well. It didn't get very verbose, but you don't necessarily have to be if you're on point. Then, last but not least, is it well executed? Well, yeah, this wine doesn't have any flaws. Seems to be perfectly ready to drink. This is a 2018, by the by. These wines will usually last in that 3 to 5 year range, as they're bigger, bolder wines from these areas. Is it on style? Yeah, this is an interesting style to talk about from Sonoma, because Sonoma is so well known for its Chardonnays rather than Rhone blends. But boy, this could easily stand up to a Rhone blend in a taste test. I would find it not quite as complicated as some of the Côte du Rhône examples, but still a appreciably big white blend rather, that has a lot to say. Is it worth the price tag? This one, by the way, runs at about $25. This is their family sellers edition as opposed to their main, what I would call their flagship line. So this is kind of their reserve line. It's a little more expensive. At that price point, I'd have to actually put this and compare this with some of the examples from France, Igugal, places like that. And is it worth it? Sure. If this is your style and your jam, then you're willing to pay for it. But when it comes to other examples that are near in style, it's near peers, you might find less expensive examples that still fulfill your niche. I don't think they're overcharging. It's just that I think they charge for this mostly out of the fact that it's their family sellers version and the fact that it is a less popular varietal. I know that you can find Cline Chardonnays, for instance, as inexpensive as $15 that are perfectly good examples of Sonoma Coast AVA Chardonnay. So I think that you're seeing the price bump based on the fact that it's a less popular overall style. All right. John knows, yes, rich people having wine info. That's exactly right, the Wall Street Journal. All right, any questions, final thoughts on our summer wine examples? What I really want to do is see you guys go out there, find something that you guys are drinking on poolside, throw those in the comments for me down below. Let us know so we can all share. I'm going to put up some examples here coming out pretty soon, and some fun things you guys can try at home as well. So I hope you guys enjoyed everything, and I certainly have enjoyed visiting with you guys. Until next week, which by the way, enjoy your Independence Day holiday. I hope you guys have a great week. Looking at my calendar real quick, I said we should be here on the 6th, so I will see you in 1 week for more WineShark shenanigans. Until next time then, I've been your WineShark. Cheers. All right, now the weird part is, do I have any food that's gonna go with my wine, or do I have to go cook? And boy, I don't know if I'm up for that. We'll see. Anyway, hope you guys have a wonderful evening. Guys, take care.